Jason, how's it going?
Hi, Sophia. I'm doing well, thanks. How about you?
Not too bad, just trying to get through the week. I was thinking about something interesting we could chat about today. What do you think about talking about least favorite places? You know, those spots we just can't stand.
Oh, that sounds like a fun topic. I'm sure we all have a few places we'd rather avoid. What's your least favorite place?
Oh, definitely, for me, it's the dentist's office. I know, it's pretty common, but I can't stand it. The smell of that antiseptic, the sound of the drillet just makes me so anxious.
Ah, the dentist's office. I can totally understand that. For me, it's the mall during the holiday season. The crowds, the noise, the chaos, it just overwhelms me. I'd much rather stay home and avoid all that madness.
Oh, I can relate to that too. The holiday crowds can be crazy. It's funny how certain places just seem to bring out our worst feelings. What about places you've been to that you just didn't enjoy at all?
That's a good question. I went to this really touristy beach once. It was crowded, dirty, and the water was nothing special. I remember thinking, why did I come here? It was such a letdown.
Oh, I've had a similar experience. I went to a supposedly famous restaurant once. The food was just average, and the service was terrible. I'd heard so many good things about it, but it didn't live up to the hype at all.
That's so disappointing when that happens. You build up expectations, and then the place doesn't deliver. It's like a letdown on a grand scale.
Exactly. It's such a bummer. But I guess we all have these experiences. It's part of life, right? Finding out which places we don't like can be as enlightening as discovering the ones we love.
Absolutely. It's like figuring out what works and what doesn't. And sometimes, those negative experiences teach us something valuable.
True. Have you ever had a place that you thought you wouldn't like, but it turned out to be different from what you expected?
Oh, definitely. I once avoided this little coffee shop near my apartment because it looked too small and uninviting. But one day, decided to give it a shot. And it turned out to be this cozy little gem with the best coffee in town.
That's a great example. It's amazing how our initial impressions can be so off. Sometimes, stepping out of our comfort zone can lead to pleasant surprises.
Exactly. And it also reminds us not to judge too quickly. Sometimes, places we think we dislike can surprise us.
So true. It's like life's way of keeping things interesting. Speaking of surprises, have you ever had a place you initially disliked but ended up liking?
Yes, actually, I used to avoid a certain park because it seemed too crowded and noisy. But after giving it another chance, I found it to be a great spot for relaxation and people watching. Sometimes, it just takes a different perspective.
That's a great point. Sometimes, our feelings about a place can change over time. Maybe it's the company we're with or a new experience that makes it better.
Exactly. It's all about keeping an open mind. Even with places we don't like, there's always a chance for a different experience.
Definitely. So, what would you say is your least favorite type of place in general?
For me, it's definitely places with a lot of noise and people. I'm more of a quiet and calm environment kind of person. What about you?
I'd say mine is places that feel too impersonal or generic. Like those chain restaurants or big box stores that lack any character or warmth.
Oh, I totally get that. It's always nice to visit places with some personality and charm.
Absolutely. It's those unique and personal touches that really make a place stand out.
So true. And I think it's important to remember that while we have our least favorite places, it's all part of the journey of discovering what we enjoy.
Definitely. It's all about the experience and what we learn from it. Even the places we don't like have something to teach us.
Absolutely. Well, I think that wraps up our first part. What do you think?
I think we've covered a lot of ground. Now, we talked about our least favorite places and some surprising discoveries. Now, let's dive deeper into how these places affect us emotionally and how we deal with them.
Sounds great. So, Sophia, how do you feel when you're in a place you really dislike?
Oh, it's usually a mix of frustration and discomfort. Like, my stomach tightens up, and I just feel this sense of wanting to escape. For instance, whenever I'm stuck in a noisy, crowded place, I get really anxious.
I totally get that. My body kind of tenses up too, especially when I'm in a situation that feels overwhelming. Like the time I went to that overly crowded mall, I felt so trapped and irritated. It's like my stress levels just go through the roof.
It's interesting how our bodies react to these negative experiences. I think it's our way of showing that something isn't right for us. What about when you're in a place you dislike? Do you try to find ways to make it more bearable?
Sometimes, yes. I try to focus on small things that I can control. For example, if I'm in a crowded place, I'll put on my headphones and listen to music. It helps me block out the chaos and feel a bit more relaxed.
That's a smart approach. I also try to distract myself with something positive. If I'm at a place I don't like, I'll remind myself that it's just temporary. I might take deep breaths or even find a quiet corner to regroup.
Deep breaths definitely help. It's all about finding little ways to manage the stress. I've also found that talking to someone who understands how I feel can be really comforting. Do you ever talk to friends or family about your least favorite places?
I do, actually. It helps to share those experiences and get support. Plus, sometimes they have great suggestions for coping or even offer to join me, which makes things more bearable.
That's a good point. Having someone to talk to or share the experience with can make a big difference. On the flip side, have you ever had a situation where you were able to change your perspective on a place you didn't like?
Yes, definitely. I remember hating this one coffee shop because it was always so busy. But then I started going there early in the morning when it was quieter, and it became one of my favorite spots. Sometimes, adjusting the timing or changing the way we experience a place can make a huge difference.
That's a great example. It's amazing how a shift in perspective can turn things around. I had a similar experience with the park I used to avoid. I started going there during off-peak hours, and I discovered its peaceful side. It became a nice retreat from the noise.
It's great when we find a silver lining in places we initially dislike. It's all about being open to different experiences and adjusting our approach. Sometimes, it's the little changes that can make a big difference.
Exactly. And it's also worth noting that our feelings about certain places can evolve over time. What we dislike now might become more tolerable or even enjoyable later on.
True, our preferences and tolerances can change with time and experience. Plus, sometimes, it's the new experiences that help us see things differently.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that while we may have negative experiences, it's okay to have those feelings. They're valid and part of our personal journey.
Definitely. Everyone has their own unique experiences and preferences. It's all about how we manage and cope with them. Speaking of coping, do you have any particular strategies for handling places you really don't enjoy?
Besides distractions and talking to others, I try to focus on the positives of the situation, if there are any. For example, if I'm at a less enjoyable event, I'll remind myself of the reasons I'm there and try to focus on the benefits.
That's a great approach. Focusing on the positives can really help shift your mindset. Another strategy I use is to set small goals for myself. Like, if I'm in a place I don't like, I'll set a goal to stay for just a little while and then reward myself afterwards.
Setting goals is a good idea. It makes the experience feel more manageable, and having a little reward at the end is a nice incentive.
Exactly. And sometimes, even just acknowledging that a place isn't enjoyable can be a form of self-care. It's okay to admit that not every place will be pleasant, and that's perfectly fine.
Agreed. It's all about taking care of ourselves and finding what works best for us. Even in places we don't like, we can find ways to make the experience more tolerable.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground on how we deal with least favorite places and how we can turn negative experiences into more manageable ones. What do you think?
I think we've had a really insightful discussion. It's been great exploring these strategies and how we handle places we don't like.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to explore how our experiences with these places impact our overall well-being and personal growth.
It's really interesting to think about how our least favorite places can affect us in deeper ways.
Definitely. I think it's important to acknowledge how our environment influences our emotions and mental state. For instance, being in a place that makes us uncomfortable or stressed can have a noticeable impact on our mood and energy levels.
Absolutely. I remember a time when I had to spend an entire day at a really chaotic convention. By the end of the day, I felt drained and overwhelmed. It was like my whole mood had been affected just by being in that environment.
That's a perfect example. Our surroundings can definitely influence our emotional state. I've had similar experiences. When I'm in a place I dislike, I often feel irritable and exhausted. It's like my whole day is affected by that one experience.
It's fascinating how something as seemingly minor as a location can have such a significant effect on us. Do you think that these negative experiences can contribute to personal growth or self-awareness?
I do think so. While it's uncomfortable, dealing with less than ideal places can teach us a lot about ourselves. We learn about our limits, preferences, and coping strategies. It's like facing challenges that help us grow stronger.
That's a great perspective. I've definitely learned a lot about my own tolerance and stress levels from these experiences. It's made me more aware of what I need to maintain my well-being.
Exactly. It's also a good opportunity to reflect on what we value and need in our environments. For example, if a noisy place really bothers us, it might be a sign that we need more quiet and calm in our daily life.
Very true. And it can also push us to seek out more positive and fulfilling environments. If we know what we don't like, we can better appreciate and seek out places that align with our preferences.
That's a good point. It's all about balancing our experiences and finding what works best for us. Even if we encounter a lot of places we don't enjoy, it helps us appreciate the ones we do.
Absolutely. And sometimes, overcoming these challenges can lead to surprising personal growth. For instance, I've learned to be more adaptable and resilient through these experiences.
That's a great takeaway. And it's not just about dealing with negative places. It's also about how we use these experiences to improve our lives and make better choices.
Exactly. It's about turning those experiences into opportunities for self-improvement. And sometimes, we might even find ways to change or improve the places we don't like.
That's a positive approach. For example, if we don't like a certain type of environment, we can try to create a more comfortable space for ourselves or find ways to make it more enjoyable.
Yes. And sometimes, just understanding why a place affects us the way it does can help us manage our reactions better. It's like gaining insight into our own triggers and finding ways to handle them.
Absolutely. It's all about self-awareness and finding strategies that work for us. And speaking of strategies, have you found any specific techniques that help you cope with your least favorite places?
One thing that's worked for me is setting clear boundaries. If I know I have to be in a place I don't enjoy, I set a specific amount of time for it and stick to that limit. It helps me feel more in control.
That's a great idea. Setting boundaries can definitely help manage the experience. I also use positive reinforcement. I reward myself with something I enjoy after dealing with a challenging place.
Positive reinforcement is a great strategy. It helps make the experience more bearable and gives you something to look forward to. I've also started practicing mindfulness techniques to help manage stress in these situations.
Mindfulness is a powerful tool. It helps keep us grounded and reduces the impact of stress. I find that focusing on my breathing and staying present can make a big difference.
Definitely. It's all about finding what works for you and using it to manage your experiences better. And sometimes, just acknowledging that it's okay to dislike certain places can be a form of self-care.
Absolutely. It's important to be kind to ourselves and recognize that it's okay to have preferences and dislikes. It's all part of being human.
Exactly. And as we've discussed, Our experiences with least favorite places can lead to valuable insights and personal growth. It's all about how we choose to approach and handle these situations.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of important points today. It's been a really insightful conversation about how our least favorite places impact us and how we can turn those experiences into opportunities for growth.
I agree. It's been great diving deep into this topic and exploring how we can manage and learn from our experiences.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to discuss how we can use our experiences with these places to make positive changes and move forward in a healthier way.
I'm looking forward to wrapping this up with some practical tips and reflections on how we can apply what we've learned to improve our lives.
Exactly. So, let's start by talking about how we can use our experiences with least favorite places to identify what changes we might need to make in our daily lives. For example, if we realize that certain places cause us a lot of stress, we can look for ways to minimize or avoid those situations.
Great point. I think it's important to assess what specific aspects of these places bother us the most. Is it the noise, the crowd, or something else? Understanding the root cause can help us make more targeted changes.
Absolutely. For instance, if you find that loud environments stress you out, you might start seeking out quieter places or creating a more peaceful space at home. It's all about finding what works for you and making adjustments to your routine.
I couldn't agree more. And sometimes, it's about setting boundaries and communicating our needs to others. If you're uncomfortable in a certain setting, it's okay to express that and find solutions together.
Yes, communication is key. It's important to advocate for ourselves and find ways to make our environments more comfortable. And if avoiding certain places isn't always possible, having strategies to cope with them is essential.
Exactly. One of the strategies I've found helpful is creating a comfort kit. It's a small collection of items that help me feel more at ease, like a favorite book, some snacks, or calming music. It's a little way to bring some comfort to less pleasant situations.
I love that idea. A comfort kit can really make a difference. I also like to keep a journal where I write about my experiences and feelings. It helps me process and reflect on how different places affect me.
Journaling is a fantastic way to gain insight and manage emotions. It's a great tool for self-reflection. And if we're talking about making positive changes, setting goals can also be really beneficial. For example, setting a goal to gradually increase our comfort level in certain situations.
Absolutely. Setting small, achievable goals can help us build confidence and gradually adjust to less favorable places. It's all about taking incremental steps towards improvement.
And don't forget about celebrating progress. Even small achievements can be really motivating. If you've successfully managed to handle a situation that used to stress you out, give yourself some credit.
That's so true. Acknowledging and celebrating our successes can really boost our confidence and encourage us to keep making positive changes. And sometimes, it's about finding the silver linings in challenging situations.
Definitely. Finding something positive, even in a place you don't like, can change your perspective and make the experience more bearable. It's about focusing on the good and making the best of each situation.
And speaking of perspective, have you ever tried reframing your experience? For example, looking at a challenging place as an opportunity to practice your coping skills or as a chance to meet new people.
Yes, reframing can be a powerful tool. It helps shift our mindset and turn a negative experience into a more positive one. It's all about finding the hidden opportunities in every situation.
Exactly. And remember, it's okay to have days when you just can't handle a place or situation. It's important to listen to yourself and take breaks when you need them. Self-care is crucial.
Absolutely. Taking care of ourselves and knowing our limits is key. And sometimes, it's about learning to balance our time between places we enjoy and those we don't.
Well said. Balancing our experiences helps ensure that we're not overwhelmed and allows us to maintain a more positive outlook. And remember, it's all part of the journey towards personal growth and well-being.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this series, I hope our listeners feel empowered to address their least favorite places in a constructive way. It's all about understanding, managing, and making positive changes.
I couldn't agree more. It's been a fantastic journey discussing this topic, and I hope everyone has found it as insightful and helpful as I have.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We've covered a lot of ground, and I hope you've gained valuable insights and strategies to apply in your own lives.
Thanks again for tuning in. We look forward to sharing more engaging conversations with you in the future.
Take care, everyone.
Bye for now.